Hi everyone, I'm Ed Kerr. For my first two videos in this series, I talked to you about technology. I showed you software like Ableton Live and Mainstage, software that's used by keyboard players on worship teams around the world. I also showed you some hardware that you could use with the software to make it much more efficient and expressive and intuitive. Well, for this video, I'm taking a very different approach. I'm going to talk about fingers. That's right, our fingers. Because I've realized the one thing we keyboard players have in common around the world is our fingers. You might be playing an incredible CF acoustic grand piano from Yamaha, or you might be playing the Montage M synthesizer, or you might be playing, well, I'm not really sure what he's playing. Whatever instrument you have, it comes down to your fingers interacting with that instrument. Your fingers realizing ideas that you have in your head for keyboard parts. You can see that I've titled this project to Go Figure, and I've given it the subtitle, The Power of Pattern in Music. That phrase, go figure, is a slang expression we use where I live. But since I realize some of you around the world might not understand it, I thought I'd show you just a couple of definitions of what the phrase can mean. Here's a definition from Cambridge Dictionary. It says, go figure is used when you tell someone a fact, and then you want to say that the fact is surprising or strange. For example, it's a terrible movie, and it made $200 million. Go figure. Here's another example. This one's from Merriam-Webster. It says, go figure is used to say that something is surprising or hard to understand. For example, after losing their first 6 games, they won the next 10. Go figure. Now that we've seen some of what the dictionary says about the phrase go figure, I want to look at those two words individually. When you see the word go, what comes to mind? I think of action. I think of progress. I think of movement toward a goal. How about a green light? That suggests that I don't have to stay where I've been. I can make progress toward where I want to be. How about the word figure? I think of figure skaters spinning, leaping across the ice on tiny metal blades, incredible athleticism. And how about this young boy trying to figure out a math problem? Yeah, all these images speak well, literally, of what go figure means. But I want to give it a musical context. Here you see musical images. On the top right, you'll see part of the chord chart for Brandon Lake's beautiful song, Gratitude. There we see rhythmic patterns. We see harmonic figures, chords changing at a certain rhythmic rate throughout the sections of the song. Just below that, you'll see some 16th notes with some slurs and some accents. Those represent a melodic figure you could include in your keyboard part. And on the far side of the screen, you'll see the word duple and triplets. Those are featured commonly in songs written in the 6/8 meter. Songs like Gratitude, Graves in the Gardens, and Great Are You, Lord. Those things might seem daunting to you right now, things that are perhaps beyond your ability currently. But the good news is that these musical elements can be broken down into figures, into patterns that are attainable. You can master these things. You've got a green light. Let's go figure. Before we jump into our first example of a pattern we could use to create our keyboard parts, I want to describe the main window we'll use for most of these examples. At the top right of the screen, you'll see a virtual keyboard that's using Meticulous software, a great program I discovered years ago from gospelmusicians.com. This software allows me to play notes on my keyboard and have the keys that I'm pressing change color, and beyond that, just above each key, I can choose to have the pitch of that key displayed. Just below that, you'll see an overhead shot of my hands on the keyboard. And this is useful because there may be times, for example, when I'm playing a voicing where one of the notes could have been taken by either the right or the left hand. I'm going to choose to take it with the left hand, for example. In this case, I could have taken the B with the right hand, but I'm going to give it to the left hand so that my right hand is free in a later position to take a higher note. Just below these keyboards, sometimes I'll present a musical element. It might be a chord chart, a fragment of a lyric, or perhaps part of a melody written out. In this type of chord chart that I'm presenting here, each of those slashes within a measure represents one beat. So in the meter of 4/4, which you're seeing right now, there would be 4 slashes in each measure. Above the slashes, when there's a chord change, you'll see that chord written out. The first chord you see above the first slash is an A. The next chord you see says D/A. That slash between the letters indicates an inversion. An inversion uses something other than the root of the chord for the bass note. The chord name appears to the left of the slash. The bass note appears to the right. In this example, we have a D chord with an A played as the lowest note. Here's the final part of our foundation before we start looking at patterns for keyboard parts. I simply want to be sure that all of us understand the basic note values in 4/4 meter. Here's a chart that shows you those values. There's one whole note per measure. There are 2 half notes in each measure. There's 4 quarter notes in each measure. There are 2 eighth notes per quarter note, and there are 4 16th notes per quarter note. Besides showing you the note values, I also want you to hear them. So I've made a recording that'll give you a 4 count into a measure, and I'm also going to say what note value you'll be hearing. Whole note, 4 beats. Half notes, 2 beats. Quarter note, 1 beat. Eighth note, 2 per quarter note. Sixteenth notes, 4 per quarter note. It's time for us to go figure together. Most importantly, it's time for you to get your hands involved. Throughout this video, as I show you pattern after pattern that you can use to create your own original keyboard parts, I hope you'll get your hands in position when you see me bring my hands to my keyboard. If you see me go up here or go there or put my left hand here, whatever I'm doing, you do the same. By having your fingers make that connection with the keyboard and with what you're seeing on the screen, the benefit will be so much quicker for you. These patterns will more quickly become a natural part of your musical vocabulary. As we work through all these patterns together, I'll pop in from time to time from the right side of the screen. For the most part, though, I'm going to keep myself hidden. That's because I want you to focus your attention on the middle part of the screen where you see the 2 keyboards, and to also look to the left where under pattern highlights, you'll see important details about each pattern. Here's a look at highlights for the constant quarters pattern. You'll play a chord 4 times per measure. There'll be 3 notes in the right hand throughout the pattern, and within a measure, those 3 notes won't change. Rather than jumping around like this, you'll just stay on the same original position. And you can hold the A at the end. Finally, this exercise is only for the right hand. Throughout every pattern we look at together during this video, you'll be given a click track.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It'll count you through a full measure, and then it will continue clicking throughout the pattern. Let me coach you through the hand position for this first pattern. We're going to build the A triad, which is A, C sharp, E, with a C sharp on top. So you'll play C sharp, A, and E. For the D chord, you'll play D on top, A below that, F sharp below that, and then back to the A. And each of the chords will be played 4 times. Here comes the click. Let's go for it.
1, 2, 3.
Here's
4.
the A, the D, back to the A, the D, and we're going to hold the A. Here we go. Hold it out. Good job. That's our first pattern. Now we'll look at how the left hand is involved during the constant quarters pattern. In the right hand, we've been playing these 3 notes, C sharp, A, and E. The left hand will be taking over with the note A just below the E of your right thumb. So this A and the D below that will be our 2 notes that are played by our left hand. Here comes the click, and as it counts 1, 2, 3, 4, that's our first whole note. Then we'll start playing on the next click.
1, 2, 3.
Here's our first A.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4, D. 2, hold it for 4. 1, 2, 3, another D. 1, 2, here's our last A, and hold it. Just before we start playing hands together for this pattern, here's a quick review of what our right hand does. We start with the C sharp just above middle C, play an A below that, and E below that for the A chord. Then for the D chord, we play D on top, A below that, F sharp below that. Now here comes the click, and we're going to get both hands up on our keyboards and get going. C sharp, A, E. Right hand, left hand plays this A. And here comes the click.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right hand quarters, left hand whole notes. Here's a D. And finally the A, and we just hold it. For this pattern, I'll be using syncopation of the left hand. Here's a definition of syncopation from Wikipedia. It says syncopation is a placement of rhythmic stresses or accents where they wouldn't normally occur. The click that we'll be using for this exercise will not just click the beats of the measure, but it's also going to click the and between each of those beats. Listen to some of the click.
1,
2, and 3, and 4. 1 and 2 and 3. The pattern will play 1 and 2 and 3 is going to syncopate 1 and 2 on the and of 2. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and. Here's the whole pattern with hands together. Here comes the click.
1
and 2. And here
3,
we go.
4.
Steady quarters in the right hand, syncopation in the left. 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, and now we hold. Before we look at any more patterns together, I want to put this in a very important context. The context is worship music. I'm going to do that by looking at what today is one of the most popular worship songs around the world. As I'm recording this, Goodness of God is the #1 song being used by worshiping churches. You'll see here that it's the #1 song in the US, it's #1 in Australia, and it's #2 in the United Kingdom. Such a powerful song. With every breath that I'm able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love that line, and I love all that the song says, and I'm sure many of you do in your churches as well. So I'm going to be using a short recording of the line, the goodness of God, that ends the choruses. And I'm going to be using that recording over the various patterns we've already looked at, so you can hear the song in context with the pattern. Let's go figure. Here's a short sample of the recording that has vocal and click.
1, 2,
The goodness of God.
That will continue as I play the whole pattern. So here we go from the top.
1, 2,
The goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Sing of the goodness of God.
And that's it. Remember, in this pattern, there's syncopation involved. In each measure, there's 2 notes played. The second one is played on the and of 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so forth. Let's hear that with the vocal now.
1, 2,
The goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Sing of the goodness of God.
Before I show you what both hands will be doing on this new pattern, I thought I'd focus on what the right hand will be doing first. Instead of playing the steady quarter notes we've played in the other examples, where we played 3 notes together on each quarter note, we're going to use what I call a pivot figure, where we'll play 2 of those notes on top, then we'll pivot with the thumb and play a note below it. So instead of C sharp, A, E together, we'll play C sharp and A, and then we'll play the E below it, like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Same thing with the D chord. Instead of D, A, F sharp all at the same time, we're going to pivot again. We'll play D and A up top, then we'll pivot and play the F sharp below, like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's our new activity. Let's hear it now with the vocal.
1, 2,
The goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. Sing of the goodness of God.
As you can see, there's a lot going on in our... Wait a minute. Sorry, something's wrong here. Let me fix this. Oh, there it is. I had turned color off. Sorry about that. Obviously, I did that on purpose because I wanted you to see how much difference color makes in the video you're seeing. In the same way, color can make a huge difference in the patterns we create on our keyboards. In this example from the chord chart for Goodness of God, in the chorus you'll see that the first chord is a D2. That's something other than the root, 3rd, and 5th that we've been playing so far in our patterns. Let's look at how we can make changes to our chords and cause new colors to appear in the music we create. As we watch this artist at work on the canvas, we're seeing constant choices being made. The artist is choosing what color to load onto the brush. They're choosing how long the brush stroke should be. They're choosing whether to mix the color with the fresh color below it. You and I are making similar choices all the time at our keyboards. For instance, on our first chord chart at the bottom, you see an A chord, A, C sharp, E. Some of the choices we make are where to put those notes on our keyboard. We could put the A way down here, the E just above it, and the C sharp up here. Or we could put the notes right together, C sharp right next to the E, right next to the A. All of those choices about where to put the notes of our chords are called voicings. The term chord voicing describes how you distribute the notes of a chord on your instrument. I chose the image of a choir to support this definition of voicing for a reason. That's because within a choir, the melody at the moment can be carried by any of the vocal parts. It could be sung by the sopranos up high, the altos below that, the tenors below that, or the basses even. So as we look at our basic patterns we've been playing, and as we add these color notes that we now can consider adding, let's see how voicings evolve. There's a particular keyboard voicing and color chord that's been used in hundreds of worship recordings through the years. If I make a simple change to the chord progression we've been using in our patterns so far, you'll see how easy it'll be for you to use that same device in your keyboard parts. All we have to do is change our D chords in our progression to D2 instead. I've circled the D2 at the bottom of the screen here. Let's look at how that D2 chord is created. The D chord we've used so far contains the notes D, F sharp, and A. Those are known as the root and the third and the fifth of the chord. If we want to play a D2 chord instead, we leave out the third and we play the 2 of the chord, which is the note between the root and the third in the scale. That leaves us with the notes D, E, and A for our D2 chord. It also leaves us with something that's essential for this familiar pattern we're playing. It leaves us with a new common tone. A common tone is a note shared by 2 or more chords. By choosing to make the second chord of our pattern a D2 rather than a straight D chord, we now have an E in our chord. That E is a common tone between the chords. The most important advice I can give you for this particular pattern is create a voicing that makes your common tone E the highest note you play. For example, the A chord in root position naturally has the E on top. If we put the root of the D2 chord on the bottom, D, E, A, we have an A on top. So we need to find a different voicing for that chord. Simply put the A on the bottom, and now you'll have A, D, E. And the result is that common tone E on top for both chords. It'll sound like this: A, D2, another A, here's the D2, E on top, and that's it. I want you to hear this in context now. You'll hear the vocal, you'll hear the click track, and in the left hand, I'll be playing the 1 and 2 and 3 syncopated pattern, while I use the right hand voicing that has the E on top.
1, 2,
The goodness of God, I will sing of the goodness of God, sing of the goodness of God.
Well, everybody hang on, because I'm going to do something a little bit risky. I'm just going to do some things spontaneously because I want to show you that trying new things can lead to something that's very satisfying and very effective musically. So we're going to work with this basic progression we've had, the A, the D2 with the E on top, and I'm going to try some different things to vary the activity and see what results. For example, in my soprano, that top note, I'm going to start with trying a quarter note, half note, quarter, quarter, half. I might call that long, short, 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 long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, short, long, short, okay? And then below it will be the movement we've heard in our progression so far, where we have that constant quarter. So that activity will be happening in the alto and tenor area of our choir, if you want to think of your voicings as choir parts, all right? So here comes the click.
1,
Here we go.
2,
The goodness
Short, long, and the right.
of God, I will sing of the goodness of God. Sing of the goodness of God.
One additional subtle change you could make is something you could do to the A chord, similar to what we did to the D chord. In fact, it's exactly the same thing we did. Instead of playing root, third, and fifth only, we could choose to make that A chord an A2. So instead of just the root, the third, the fifth, we would leave out the third, but play the note in the scale that's between the root and the third, and that is the B note in the key of A, is the scale. So now we have an A triad available and the A2. And now what that simple change makes available to us is something like this. Now we have this pretty internal melody. It's not on the top of our voicing, it's inside the voicing. The E is a constant activity on top, but in the middle, that's a pretty melody. And it just resulted from trying some different things. Again, you have permission, try things. You may come up with something that's very satisfying like that. So here it is in context. I like that. I'm going to take it one step further, and again, simply putting myself on the spot to show you that some things can result from trying stuff that can be really satisfying. So, this melody is a pretty line, and it could be a pretty line for another instrument besides just your keyboard. What a concept. So, let's say you have a cellist joining you for your next worship service. What a blessing. I love working with a cellist. Sometimes, though, you don't know quite what to give the cellist to play. And if they come from a classical background, they might not be comfortable taking a chord chart and saying, oh, yeah, I'll just make up stuff. It's great if you can give them some melodic activity that they can present during the song. So this would be a beautiful line for a cello to play. Now, that insight brings something else to mind about internal melodies. To harmonize a melody, it's interesting to go 6 notes below the melody note in the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That interval of a sixth is a beautiful interval that we hear a lot in classical music, in the music of Brahms, one of my favorite composers in the classical world. He uses a sixth a lot. And he takes it a step further and uses parallel sixths, meaning he might do that sixth and then this sixth right next door, and then continue the sixth even further. They're called parallel sixths. They move in sixth constantly. So listen to that in context. 3, 4. This pattern has definitely evolved quite a bit as we've worked on it together. I want to play through it now and just let you hear everything we've created. One slight change I want to make is introducing this left-hand figure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It basically plays the downbeat as an eighth, and then on every and for the rest of the measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, I repeat that note up an octave like this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Lots of syncopation. Then the D, same concept, up an octave, bass note, and then up an octave, like that. That's how it works. I'll also use my pad player just to give some richness to the background. Let's hear the whole thing now. As I near the end of my content for this project here, I thought I'd go a little crazy. I'm going to show you a pretty extreme example of what can happen when you go figure using some of these keyboard parts. I'm going to base this segment on Lauren Daigle's beautiful song, You Say. I'm sure you've heard it many times. I remember when I heard it for the first time, how inspired and moved I was by the truth that was packed into that lyric. So powerful, so many beautiful affirmations of how God loves us, how He is for us, how He gives us His strength when we think we're weak. I was also really inspired by that piano part in the arrangement. So much energy, all that activity supporting the beautiful lyric and melody. Lauren Daigle's beautiful song is full of arpeggiation. When we say that we arpeggiate in music, it means we play the notes of a chord sequentially as a stream of activity rather than simultaneously as a solid chord. In this project, the very first pattern we looked at had us playing C sharp A, E as a steady stream of quarter notes, playing 3 notes at a time. If we were to arpeggiate those chords, we would play 1 note at a time and create some sort of pattern based on single notes rather than multiple notes at a time. Before I play this keyboard part based on the Lauren Daigle song, I thought I'd focus on the music notation for a moment. At the bottom of the screen here, you can see red circles around 4 groups of notes. Each of those groups of notes is a sixth. The first group is C sharp down to an E. On beat 1, on beat 2, the same pitches, C sharp E. On beat 3, B, D is a sixth. And finally, on beat 4, A, C sharp. By the way, I notated that an octave higher, but I'm going to play it in this register here. So this notation that I've shown you sounds something like this. 3, 4. As I bring things to a close now, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me here. It's been quite a journey, going from playing quarter notes on every beat to playing 4/16 notes on every beat. I've shown you some of the ways I like to create patterns. I've given you some ideas for how you might create patterns. I hope in the days to come, you'll spend some time making some of these patterns your own, exploring them like I have. I hope you'll try them in different keys, slower tempos, faster tempos. Make them your own. You've got a unique calling in your life. You have a unique understanding of the love of God. And you have a unique place on your worship team. I pray that your gifts grow, your heart to serve grows, and that your love for the Lord is evident in all that you play, in the way you live day to day, and the way you love the Lord. Thank you again for joining me here. Now go figure.